Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we'll have the latest from the live radar as we have Storm Claudia still impacting us throughout the rest of this evening. We've seen a lot of heavy rain throughout Friday so far, and we're going to continue to see further heavy rain through the rest of Friday evening into the early hours of Saturday, and by around sunrise we're expecting the majority of the heavy rain to have cleared. Still some cloud and lighter precipitation, but it should slowly begin to fizzle over the coming hours. We'll look at that in more detail in the latest UKV and have a look at the incoming northerly wind, as it is turning much colder through this weekend, and come Monday, Tuesday, temperatures not going to be getting much above 5 or 6 degrees, even further southwards, and overnight widely down towards freezing or below freezing. So the coldest conditions we've seen since, of course, earlier on in spring or last winter. So yeah, really cold spell coming up as Storm Claudia does clear, and that big block that is halting Storm Claudia further southwards and producing this stationary rain as that block starts to take over. Longer range, we are looking at the end of the colder spell in around 7 or 8 days' time, so come towards the end of next working week into the following weekend, and it does look like for a time we could go a bit more Atlantic driven. However, we still have some very strong signals of further cold conditions, or at least block conditions, later in November into especially early December. We're not going to really address it in this video, but tomorrow we are going to do another winter look ahead, one of our final winter look aheads for this season. Of course, we've been mentioning the stratosphere quite a lot throughout the autumn, and mentioned it a lot over the past few years. And you may have seen online that there is a fairly decent chance that we see an extremely big weakening of the polar vortex high up in the stratosphere, and even the slight risk of seeing an official sudden stratospheric warming in the next few weeks. And that could have profound impacts on the early portion of winter. Could produce further blocking and maybe a very cold December to come. Of course, this is the earliest sun stratospheric warming I've personally ever seen, so it is difficult to say exactly what the impacts will be. But given some of the longer term signals we've got at the moment, we could be in for a very, very cold month, and that's something we'll touch on further in tomorrow's winter look ahead. So do remember, if you're enjoying videos, do like and subscribe. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see the stationary band of rain we have at the moment. It's a little bit further northwards than predicted yesterday, and we did see a shift in the amber warning, just shifting it further northwards, or extending it further northwards this morning. And you can see the heaviest rain right now is across much of northern England, up towards Yorkshire and the northwestern parts of North Wales. The amber warning also extends further southwards, and you can see further southwards across parts of the South Midlands, just towards sort of north of London. We have some hefty showers here. The main band is to the north. These are some really heavy, even thundery showers just along the far south of the weather front. And these again are causing issues, not only producing more rain, but producing really high precipitation rates, so potentially causing some flash flooding in areas where the ground is already very, very saturated. Now, the rain is pretty much at its biggest extent right now. It is shrinking in size and intensity over the coming hours and should be disintegrated away by the early to middle portion of Saturday morning. So perhaps another 12 hours of rain in some spots, but most maybe only 6 hours more, and it should reduce in intensity, but it's still very beefy out there at the moment and still pretty horrific. You can see to the north, there's even a bit of snow over the highest ground of northern England, and some snow showers popping into Scotland. And this is because to the north of the weather front, it's turning much colder as the northerly wind is arriving and will be pushing in for all over the next 48 hours. If you look at the temperatures, you can see it's very mild to the south of the weather front, very cold to the north. And again, it's this temperature clash from the big block up towards Greenland, forcing northerly winds, with this low trying to come up from the south, Storm Claudia, and this collision has caused this big temperature contrast and exacerbated this stationary weather front. Now, if you look at the precipitation over the past 24 hours, it did actually start raining more than 24 hours ago, so actually total rainfall totals are higher than what we've got here, but you can see widely across the Midlands, parts of Wales and Northern England, we've seen 40 to 60 millimetres. That's pretty much in line with the Met Office warnings, and of course it's still totting up, still could see another 10, 20, 30 millimetres on top of this. So widely seeing that inch to 2 inches of rain, maybe even 3 or 4 inches in the most prone areas. Of course, still got those amber warnings issued. And again, it's not just the amount of rain here, it's the widespread nature. It's not just impacting one region or one area. It is impacting a very large portion of England and Wales. This is probably one of the largest yellow I've ever seen on this chart for England and Wales here, covering huge swathes, and it's only going to increase further over the next few hours as the rainfall totals continue to build. Complete contrast to northern and western Scotland, which traditionally, the Atlantic flow with storm systems, is the wettest part, with the relief rainfall coming in from the west to southwesterly wind. On the complete contrary right now, it is not rained at all there over the past 24 hours. Bone dry, very cold, but bone dry, with all the rain totting up further southwards. Now, if you do look at the latest weather warnings, we're not going to look into these in too much detail. It's not really changed too much today. But if we do just touch on the amber warnings, they're still issued to midnight, so should expire within the next 3 or 4 hours. Of course, Met Office is predicting, and the UKV is predicting, the precipitation is going to ease quite quickly tonight. As I said, by 6 a.m, we're expecting the majority of the rain to have cleared, but still many hours of rain to come from the looks of the live radar. The other warning across South Wales is extended to midnight. Now, this warning across South Wales was actually upgraded slightly to medium likelihood, so very close to being a red warning. Now, looking at the latest past 24-hour totals, perhaps not warranting a red warning here. It is still very dangerous out there. But a lot of the time when we see red warnings, we're seeing some of the thick oranges and reds. Perhaps that's still to come in the next couple of hours. But yeah, definitely amber warning worthy, perhaps not red warning. But again, it's all very regional, all depends on the ground saturations and things that are very, very difficult to predict. But I hope everyone there was well aware and well informed, as these warnings have been out for the past couple of days. Back to the warnings, the amber warning further eastwards was extended further northwards, but that was the only main change there. Again, timings are exactly the same. And then still got this more widespread yellow warning until 6 a.m. tomorrow for that precipitation. So expecting the heaviest rain to have been gone in the next 9 hours or so, but still expecting bits and bobs around tomorrow, but it should peter out quite quickly. Now, if you look at the latest UKV, you can see the rain really continuing to pick up through this evening. It does look more extensive on the live radar than the UKV is predicting, which is worrying, I must say. Even if the UKV is underdoing it by a couple of hours, or just by a slight change in intensity, it's going to do a lot of damage across already saturated ground. So I'm hoping that the live radar does update soon and we see a disintegration of that precipitation, because if it doesn't peter out like the UKV is showing, predicting over the next 3 or 4 hours, then yeah, we could be in for some real trouble into Saturday morning, some real big flooding if we see more than another 10 or 20 mils like there is forecasted. So rain really petering out very quickly in the next couple of hours. We'll have to wait and see if that does actually happen. It's unlikely to carry on. Rainfall like this is relatively well forecast. It's normally convection that's a bit more difficult to forecast. So yeah, hopefully it does follow this, and you can see into the early hours of Saturday, still raining around 8-9 a.m, just lighter and drizzly into Saturday afternoon and evening. Eventually, though, the northeasterly wind does start to arrive during Saturday evening into Sunday, and you can see it's much drier and clearer there into Sunday, but it starts to turn much colder. Temperatures are not going to be that cold, especially further southwards on Sunday, but it's going to start to feel very cold. And then you can see into Monday, wintry showers do arrive, much colder for all, low single digits or mid single digits at best. And then into Tuesday and Wednesday, we do see some small disturbances, which are pretty typical in these northerly flows, and those could give more widespread precipitation. Some snow across parts of central, northern Scotland, maybe even drifting further southwards and eastwards. Again, a bit of a eclectic mix of rain, sleet and snow here, but again, can't rule out any type of sort of precipitation typing here, simply because the dew points are below freezing. The air masses are cold enough, it's just the surface temperatures might not be cold enough, and that's just because we've had such a mild last few weeks and autumn generally so far, and yeah, that's not all going to cool down in the space of 2 days of very cold air. It's going to take longer, multiple nights of frosts to see and the temperature's really dropping. So that's why this is more of a bit of a mix, even though most of the indicators do look pretty supportive for wintry precipitation. So yeah, quite a high chance of precipitation there, and as I said, could be a whole mix. Higher ground, definitely looking at snow. Coastal areas, more likely to be rain. And then if you further you go inland at the higher elevation, the more chance of seeing wintry precipitation mixing in. And that clears there into Wednesday. There's still lots of heavy snow showers around there. You can see the cold air mass starts to push in around Sunday afternoon, or the very cold air mass. You can see it really takes over Monday, and then again with that disturbance moving through on Tuesday, it continues to strengthen as that pushes through, and you can see really cold there into Wednesday. If we look at the max temperatures this afternoon, very mild in the south, much colder further northwards, and those cold conditions will be returning or arriving for all in the next couple of days. You can see still 14 or 15 degrees in the south tomorrow, very mild, much colder overnight into Sunday, widely below freezing for northern areas, but still high single digits in the south. But by Sunday afternoon, the temperatures don't rise much, 8 to 10 degrees. Into Monday, down towards freezing or below freezing for many northern and western areas, and by the afternoon, not much rising much above 4 to 7 degrees. Tuesday, though, look at that widespread frost overnight, and into the afternoon, not getting much above 4 to 6 degrees, with widespread ice day there for parts of Scotland. And then as we head into Wednesday, looking even colder, not much above 4 or 5 degrees for large areas of England, Wales and Ireland. And you can see further northwards, a big, quite widespread ice day there for any moderate hills across northern England and Scotland. So looking really cold and potentially wintry for a time into the middle portion of next week. Not expecting, massive, not expecting a dumping of snow, but definitely some areas could see a surprise, some areas could see a covering, and yeah, definitely looking like could be a few wintry scenes out there into the middle portion of next week. Still very early on in the season, of course. We're looking at 18th, 19th of November here, so very early on to be seeing these sort of conditions. But yeah, could just be setting the scene for what's to come over the coming weeks if our winter look ahead that we'll do tomorrow does have or does come to fruition. Now, if you look at the latest GFS, you can see the battle at the moment between Storm Claudia and, of course, the big block towards Greenland. Now, Storm Claudia doesn't look like a particularly vicious low, but it's because it's so slow moving, it's just dumping so much rain over the top of us. The block kind of reorientates over the next 24 to 48 hours, and then you just see that direct northerly piling in. Small disturbance moves down central areas there into Wednesday, and that could form those showers and bits and bobs of snow. Eventually, the northerly gets cut off by the end of next working week, and you see a bit more of a flat westerly flow developing. But it's not as clear cut. Still, an Atlantic ridge trying to develop, and a brief northerly wind there again around the end of the month, not lasting too long, and then again high pressure trying to extend back in. So not looking remarkably cold there from the GFS, but still hinting at further colder plunges there into late November. But as we'll see tomorrow, a real interest is especially into early to middle of December. Could be some colder weather up until then, but from impacts from the sudden stratospheric warming, definitely would be more into December we're looking at. So that's going to be something to look at tomorrow. If we do catch up on the GEM, it's very similar over the next few days. The northerly wind piling in through the weekend. Again, that disturbance moving through on Wednesday, staying very cold, even through to next Friday and Saturday. So actually holding on to those cold conditions for another couple of days there. Yes, high pressure topples, so it'll be dry, and we cut out the snow risk, but with higher pressure, clearer skies, the temperatures would likely drop even further overnight, and there could be some really harsh frost in this scenario. And then out to day 10, the block towards Greenland weakens, but it doesn't actually disappear and actually stays there, and we could open the door once again to another northerly flow developing around day 10. So that'll be interesting one to watch. Again, it's not cold here, but still could be primed for something colder once again late November. Finally finished by looking at the ECMWF. Again, northerly wind arriving through the coming days, looking really cold, and that low, the move through on Wednesday, actually looks pretty well formed there, which is very interesting. Again, we'll be just see the precipitation on that. If we do just put that on quickly, you can see actually more extensive precipitation that would be snow potentially as that moves through. That would be very interesting if that did occur. And then you can see that does eventually clear, stays cold all the way to the end of the week, and then you can see that more flatter westerly does arrive. Goes pretty unsettled there, but once again, similar to the GM, still quite a lot of blocking up towards Greenland. Could continue to enhance northerly or northeasterly winds out towards 360 hours. Again, amplified jet stream, still a bit of high pressure towards Greenland, but it's not overwhelming, so the Atlantic is still breaking through. So we'll wait and see what happens there, but definitely further signs that it could be more colder conditions, or at least chilly conditions towards late November. And then we'll have to see what December has in store. All indications are towards a very cold December, I must stress. Not only at last winter look ahead, where of course the Met Office contingency planner was suggesting pretty cold, or cold was a lot more likely than it's been in prior years. Of course, the longer range ECNWF forecasts also predicted a colder start to winter. And now, of course, a sudden stratospheric warming coming along. The only caveat I'd put to that is some have suggested that the sudden stratospheric warming could actually put off kilter the other climate drivers, and it could all end up blowing up into a westerly festa stormy pattern. We'll wait and see, of course, and we'll explore that in tomorrow's video. And some really interesting patterns could be coming up in the next few weeks, in the next month in general. And maybe even the lead up to Christmas. If we do finish by looking at the ensembles, you can see it's mild at the moment still for the next 48 hours, 36 hours, dropping off quite considerably during Sunday into Monday, and then it looks cold for most of next week. Monday through to Thursday, definitely, most likely Friday, and even some runs like the GM into Saturday, maybe even Sunday, before returning back to average once again. You can see there's milder runs and colder runs, nothing too far from the mean, so it's pretty typical with cooler air nearby, but still more of an Atlantic flow, so not too bad. Precipitation is moderate to high, so a return to precipitation looks quite likely. You can see snow depth, there is a few spikes appearing around Wednesday, even for London, which does suggest there is the risk of seeing some falling snow. Now, I don't think there's going to be massive accumulations for low-lying areas, especially further south at all. I don't think that is on the cards. There's a very small chance of that occurring. But I do think there's a moderate chance, maybe even a high chance, of seeing something wintry falling out of the sky. So if you are out and about Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe even Tuesday, there is a chance of seeing some snow, graupel, hail, sleet, or something of the sort as we do head through the middle of the week. And of course, further northwards, definitely a higher chance of wintriness. And over higher ground, probably will be looking at snow. Most of this precipitation would be snow. ECNWF just has run much, much colder, of course, during next week. Return to average in around sort of 8-9 days' time. And then hovering kind of above and below for the foreseeable future beyond that. So again, no real obvious signs. So still got to get through the rest of Storm Claudia over the coming hours. Hopefully the impacts are not too bad over the next few hours. And of course there will be flooding in places. There will be damage, but I'm hoping that it's not too widespread. Luckily, we've got dry conditions coming up through the weekend and the start of next week. Yes, there's going to be some snow and some snow showers, but it's not actually that much overall water coming out of the sky. It's not going to really exacerbate any flooding issues at all. So generally a dry next week coming up. A bit of wintriness, but nothing too bad. And of course, the colder temperatures should actually allow the ground to freeze in places. And again, that should hopefully prevent flooding getting too bad in places. But I think that just the lack of rainfall over the next week will definitely be a saving grace. Of course, though, it is turning much colder, so do be wary of that. It's very mild still at the moment, especially in the south, and it is going to be like flicking a switch over the next 48 hours from 15 degrees to 5 degrees come Monday. So do be wary of that. And of course, do make sure you stay tuned for our further videos coming up over the next few days. And of course, planning on doing a winter look ahead tomorrow, which will be intriguing given the potential sun stratospheric warming we're going to be seeing in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.